So I'm really excited. This is the Awkward Interviews, and I got Mr. Five with me. He created the Incarcerated Nation Network, and from what I understand, he's so busy doing so many other things as well that it's a miracle he's able to, maintain these relationships with the dozens of nonprofits led by formerly incarcerated people, to have an annual gathering for all of these individuals and families and nonprofits, and also has an incredibly unique background. He was incarcerated himself, but well before that, he comes from a family of Black Panthers, and was born into this movement, and is one of, to me, the most incredible leaders pushing it forward today.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining me. Let's start off by sharing what you're willing on your background before your incarceration. What was your childhood like? What were the lessons you were taught and by whom? And how did that kind of, along with the radicalization that comes from the violence of being incarcerated, led you to where you are today?
Pretty average story. Immigrant family. My family was from Ethiopia, born over there, came over here when I was very young, a baby. My family was in California, then New York, as the Panther Party chapter moved out, because they came over here to make a better life, and then was like, holy shit, we're Black, we have to fight, and joined the progressive movement. My mother was one of the first social workers in the first women reentry network called Project Green Hope in New York. They opened up the eating hall in the Bronx and had services with the Harlem chapter. We had an office on 122nd and 7th Avenue. And then Corona, Queens was another chapter. So New York was pretty bustling, early 60s when the Panther movement first started, 66, 67. When I was younger, regular normal life, trying to service within my community and be a small younger person who didn't have a choice. I grew up in a compound, a little different life. I wasn't allowed out unless I was going to school. Literally, my father.
Let me just stop you for a second. What you call normal for most people isn't normal. I think you're so embedded in this life that what is normal to you and those you've always been around, whether you're, a Black person or a white person living in the city or in the country, it is actually pretty unusual, way that you were raised. So that, to me, it says even more about you that in your mind, that's just like, of course, that's how it was.
Right.
But go on, continue.
No. So let me expound upon that. So my father had a literal Shaolin Monastery in the middle of the South Bronx. He taught martial art. He was one of the first Black martial artists. And we had a compound. He managed the building around the corner, and he owned this building. So between those two backyards, we had a sort of real space. It was a different type of space, community space. Like when in the first chamber was like a boxing chamber. And so people would just be able to walk in and just beat on a bag. And my father believed that, some people just need to hit the bag and it could save their life and their marriage. And I didn't understand that when I was younger. Like, okay, you got these guys coming in just punching on stuff. It also was like Switzerland for the community. So community problems got solved there. Plenty of times guys ran in there where other guys was chasing them and became a mediation place. Substance abuse. My family always worked with people with substance abuse a lot. That was almost like a treatment. So my father would give people space to detox because that wasn't given in a Black community, right? Food, we cooked for everyone every day. Besides the martial art training and the youth programs and the classes and the free classes for women on Saturdays, because he felt like he had to teach them different on a separate day. That front yard, that backyard, the weights, the gym, people coming home from prison, being able to work out. It was a free community space. Kind of different, when you don't have a personal space. When I was younger, feds used to always harass my parents and my family. And one day I was teen, I had a huge coffin with toys and stuff in the back because my My life in my house was structured differently. Like, we grew up in a poor neighborhood, but we weren't really poor. I had like 3 refrigerators. My father had one just for meats because he cooked and barbecued every day. Like, it was a different structure of education as well. I went to, at the time we was living in the Bronx, I went to a Muslim school on Woody Crest, also going to a shul, which is a Jewish school. And then I had political education classes. Like, I didn't have a normal life. I couldn't just go home and sit around and watch. Like, TV wasn't allowed. It was certain programming that I had to watch. And yeah, I grew up like that. So I tried to escape during my teenage years. Like, I'm gonna join a gang when we go back to Compton, when I go see my uncle. And I ended up joining the BRIMS, the Black Revolutionary Independent Military. And, you know, kind of found out later on when you meet some of the older OGs that they're like, you're trying to be a new individual. And they're like, hey, aren't you like Abu's son? Isn't your family Panthers? Ain't BJ your uncle? Like, what are you doing? Like, we learned from them. We're doing wrong. And in that concept, you end up, you know, 360 and respecting, you know, your lineage. Yeah, that was like my life, my zone. I went to 20-something high schools in high school, very difficult. Yeah. My family was different. I wasn't allowed to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I wasn't allowed to sit in the classroom. It was always these grade school, middle school memories of, because they would screw up my last name. Mualimm-Ak, they would just, you know, herilify my last name. And we had to be escorted out the auditorium before they said the Pledge of Allegiance. It was a political standpoint that...
You know, I did the same thing.
Yeah.
My parents didn't tell me I had to, but that just didn't, you know, the Pledge of Allegiance didn't seem right to me.
Yeah.
I was definitely raised by, you know, a Jewish civil rights activist, and you know, anti-war and all of that stuff. But it, you know, not in any way like the environment that you were raised. It just, to me, you know, it sounds really incredible. I mean, one, kind of, you know, developing future leaders, and also it sounds to me so much like, you know, what we're looking to do in an abolitionist framework today, like across the country, where if there are issues in the community deals with it through mediation, providing substance abuse treatment, you know, providing meals and education. You know, so this is a model that we can use today as we try to limit and eventually get rid of the influence of police, and you know, actually fund the communities themselves.
Well, you know, that's where somewhat of my family's life work, Jazz's life work. And, you know, I came home to like, okay, I'm getting older now. I got to take care of family business. And this is my lifestyle. This is my commitment. My godfather Jazz invented Cop Watch. Like, he literally owned Harlem at one point. Like, literally him, Guy Fisher, Nicky Barnes, and whoever had that case dissolved, they had an immense amount of property. Like, he had 62 speakeasies in Harlem. Like, he was employing people. You had Sylvia's, you had different Black businesses that was coming up. You had Malcolm. My father had an Oasis Steak and Take. You had the Mosque on 116th, the NOI, the Fruits of Islam movement. They were buying real estate and property. And then you had this interjection of sort of state control. Even sad to say, Adam Clayton Powell was against the state office building. He called it a spy in Harlem. And the statue from the march that he led against it was the statue that they used. It was crazy, like, to put in front of the state office building. And so the state owning property in Harlem gives them first right of refusal when people move out or people being incarcerated to extort property. That is community control. Cop Watch was the first system of holding police accountable, sort of created after the Panthers. So that was one of the first organizations we made, which got me locked up, was the campaign to end New Jim Crow. Actually, it was Attica's, all of us. So I did time in prison, state, city, all across my life since I was younger. Adds up to about 10 years in prison. But that last time that I came home, like 2010, it was because of an arrest of some upstate officers, and all the other cases were being adjudicated. I got a split bid. Yeah, I'll take that. I'm in solitary right now. Let me out. Like, I'm going home.
Yeah.
Had a panic attack at the bus station, didn't really make it to parole, went to the hospital. They did a stress test. That was sort of the reason they used. But to be honest, the real reason is that I came home on Tuesday. By Thursday, we launched Atticus, all of us, with Angela Davis, my Mark Lamont Hill, my godfather, Jazz Hayden. And the PO was like, hey, is this you in the paper? Because I could have swore we told you not to be around any felons. And here you're around America's most wanted felons. And they sent me back to jail. So I got locked up really because I was helping people in creating a reentry network. And we had launched the campaign M. Jim Crow after Michelle's Alexander book too. So here you had an educational platform, and then you had a real issue about Atticus, all of us, in closing that to really organize behind. And between 2010 and 2012, when I violated and came back out, we was able to successfully sort of change the city laws and the codes and the bills to say, you are the best person to help someone coming home if you're reentry. Urban Justice Center played a part in that. We had a reentry advocate project, and we had certain key roles, like Brooklyn Defender Services when Wesley first started, was to help people returning home. So those key roles are like, oh, this person, you build up the data, and next in every borough, you say, oh, these people are the best people. They're going to parole with them. They can actually offer resources. Yeah. And at the same time, when I came home in 2010, I also met with Clinton Lacey, who was the first Black, to me, like really Black, head of probation. And he took the probation out of the courts and the sort of like, you have to go past this point of you being locked up to attend a probation session. So it was like this fear of always going in, plus they could just keep you once you're past that point. It should be in the community because not only are you in there alone, but CBOs can't get in, right? So he created this thing called a neon hubs, which people cursed him about, like, oh, you put it in the community, we're gonna have jail in the community, until the nonprofits realized, well, you can just walk right in the door, it's on the sidewalk, and just go in and help the youth. Your program could collaborate now because it's now in the network of the community.
Yeah.
And so that was like the second phase. The third phase was, which was a lot harder, we're still on like phase 5, 6 now, but it was to really create a training system, right? To put and expand the public health system. One of the things my godfather did was he proved stop and frisk all the way to Congress. Like when we fight things, we took solitary, congressional hearings, all the way to Congress. They're not gonna do shit. That's the reason why we do it. We do it to show the world that this is a system, it's not gonna do nothing. We're gonna fight this all the way to the top just so that you understand it's not gonna change until we do it, right? And so that's what Cop Watch is about. It was about, yeah, we have the right to record, but watch them still bust us in the head about it. So we have to create common sense bills to hold them accountable. Yes, you have a system where people had to win those lawsuits, right? People had a sister in Brooklyn, was the first one. She was like, I know you're gonna lock me up for this, but I have to do this. And she recorded them. She was also a lawyer. We need brave people like that because now that is everybody's first instinct. I am so proud that sometimes I'm running to a scene because I'm just out there like that sometimes. And I'll see a cop pull a car over. I'll be like, hey, hold on a minute, honey. Let me go see this. But by the time I walk over there, there's 3 other people, total strangers, live streaming from their account, right? So I feel like that's success. What's needed, that's already moving, that's going. Like Jose was one of my godfather's first mentees, Jose LaSalle, he's amazing. He created Cop Watch. He was like, he learned from Jazz and he really continued that movement. But we also need progressive people in the community, which is called credible messengers. These are people who are coming home, just returning citizens. I'm just gonna be honest with you. When I was young, when I was going to high school, right? I remember I went to art and design. That's where I ended up staying and graduating and went to Cooper Union from there. When I was in A&D, we used to cut to the arcade on 42nd. That was like, let's go play video games, right? And so the truancy officers were guys that were from your neighborhood. They knew everybody. They knew your mother. They knew your father. They just came home from prison. They were tough guys. They was the ones that like, oh, don't worry about it. I'll go down there and catch them. And they know where you're at.
Would be, right?
Right, right. But it was community. Like I was getting chased home and they were like, well, tell your mother when you get home. By the time I got to my block, my mother was like, you're gonna die when you get in the house. So whatever you're doing, have fun.
Yep.
That was more of a threat. Yeah, that was more of a threat to me than calling the cops.
Exactly.
Than having policing in school, than incarcerating you at a young age when for reasons of being a kid, right? And I don't want to talk about my delinquency, but it was a system where community was live. You know, Mr. Rodriguez was the domino man in the corner. He played and hang out. He was also the neighborhood snitch. He would tell everything for your parents what you were doing. Like, you know, he went to school and then walked back to the train station. And so when I came home, he was being locked up for trespassing. I had people being harassed for stop and frisk. I had elders walking around with their Con Ed bill in their pocket, like I live here, to prove it. We had cops in the hallway. I have a young man who was taking out the trash to an incinerator and had a hoodie on and a screwdriver in his pocket and went to jail for weapons possession, like 10 feet from his door, and it validly stick, you know? So that fight continues, but the solution is creating more responsible people in the community, buffers between the police. So credible messengers are also violence interrupters. We've created a slew of training academies. We developed the first one at the new school because no other school really wanted to deal with us, just to be honest. The new school was the first. The credits are like 1,500 a piece. It was a lot, but you get undergrad credits. So it's an accredited class, whereas people directly impacted could get their college credits and their employers can increase their pay. They don't have to constantly use it. You don't have the experience, but their experience is grounded in an unconformed structure. Now, I suffered during that because here I am, a person who wrote the curriculum, yet the new school didn't want to pay me like every other professor. They was like, oh, but you have to have a degree in which you're teaching. So wait a minute. I designed the class. By the way, this woman who was the vice president of the new school is running for mayor right now. Her name is Maya. Literally was like, I designed the class. I wrote the curriculum. I have like, my curriculum's different. Like when we're watching Free Angela and all of the political, like Angela's coming. Like when we're watching the Black Panthers is teaching the class. Like when I did Black Panthers, Chadwick Boseman and Marvel, their company came and did a panel with the Panthers. Like it's different with our class. We're a little unique. When we talk about music, it's my song and Chia Ali teaching the class, right? We have artists who come in and teach. Prodigy would teach about gun possession because he felt like I was a star, but I had an ego. I had a gun for no reason. I could have hired a bodyguard, but because of my ego, I ended up going to jail. That was a different structure of mentoring. When I was young and I used to go to political education class, it was generations before me, but I seen pictures of Maya Angelou teaching the class in the Panther Center. Like you had Halle Belafonte teaching etiquette classes. Like it was a different structure that you felt empowered to be a part of this movement. And that's what I wanted to create for the community, because people coming home, youth who are on probation, and then regular community members in one class, learning about slavery, incarceration, the systems of trauma, allostatic load, how the brain operates, how the teenage brain operates. 16 weeks, fully accredited, have a whole associate's degree units, have 60 units, right? I have enough that any school could absorb it. It's a fight continuously. Vance, who's the DA, not a hero.
No.
Looks like a hero because people forget that it was my godfather, Jazz, who had a civil forfeiture bill. His fight was like, okay, just take the money you took from us when we was doing wrong and give it back. And that's what Vance did. So we had an influx of money. Then Vance wouldn't give us the money for the new school. So we had to just give them the whole curriculum. Like, just take it and open up at CUNY. And then they open up the CUNY Justice Center, which then the city can give to the city. Now you have no excuse. So now there's credible message training everywhere. There's boot camps, there's this, there's that. And we're creating different layers in the community. Now you got a violence interrupter. Now you have a guy. So my friend calls them community outreach providers. I just don't like it because the acronym is COPS. And so the community outreach providers are just in the neighborhood to provide jobs.
Right.
And that movement is the credible messenger movement. So it creates different layers of community people. You have different choices than to call the cops. A.T. Mitchell doing Man Up, Brownsville Think Tank Matter, my boy Shan Duke in Brooklyn with GMAC. Like all of those are those are all our graduates, right? From Life Camp with, I love her, Erica Ford. They have situations that are so deep. They're so ingrained in their community as support that they're troubleshooting problems before it happens. People are coming in there before they go shoot somebody, or coming in there while they just got shot, before the cops are even called. And they're resolving it on a community level and then reporting to the system if need be, right?
Only if need be.
Only if need be.
Yeah.
Because there's been situations where somebody was shot and the person who shot them ran in right behind them and it was resolved and solved. And then you had to take that person to the hospital, right? We have great projects like Common Justice now, which takes violence and creates a sentence of community supervision rather than prison, but mediation. Like you have to have this whole thing out with the person you shot. You need to hear from their family. Like all of that is a part of that curriculum. I mean, it's incredible. And I feel like, well, it's needed. It's needed.
It's so needed. It's the reason, you know, we created 10 demands at this national level. You know, and a lot went into the 10 demands, you know, by each demand, including specific laws that should be, you know, passed or laws that should be repealed. You know, we have a lot of resources on the site, toolkits and things but to me, it seems like for one, you know, it's amazing to me how much work you've done and how like the amount of
It's all I
credit.
do.
I know. And I mean, it's amazing to me, like, you know, it's so obvious to me you're not here for credit, even though, you know,
Die for the people would be the honor of cause, man.
yeah. And,
That
you
is
know,
what we do.
so that's the one thing that, you know, I'm thinking about as you're telling me all of these things, you know, kind of the web or like the way it just goes out, like you do this and it leads to this and then this, and it's just the empowerment expands. The other thing I was wondering is like, how does someone in another city who wants to start developing these things access your brain? How do they access
Call me, email. It's just that simple. Like literally, it's that simple. Just reach out, connect with me. We are expanding like a network, so we're expanding to 50 states. We feel that we have enough projects in 50 states to create these coalitions. Like I could literally create a whole campaign in every state right now. I have 7 states organizing at the same time. This is going to pop up and
when
have
you say
solutions.
you mean Incarcerated Nation?
Right. Incarcerated Nation started by Joseph Jazz Hayden.
Tell me about Incarcerated Nation. Like explain to the listeners what it is, how it came to be, and the future of the organization or the network.
Incarcerated Nation was based on the principle that at one time we had to fight to get these facts out. It wasn't just common knowledge, right? We're the ones who do all these films, documentaries, movies, reports, articles for years. And it takes a commitment to getting that out there sort of selflessly. The Incarcerated Nation represents that there's a nation inside of America. If you take all of the jails and prisons in America and they'd be about the size of Texas, literally all of the space, the landmass, it would be a lot. And if you filled that with the 2 million people that's in prison, plus the other 125 million people that was under correctional control, literally 1/3 of the American population, you have an entire nation inside of a nation. Actually, we try to create a collective group called Nation Inside, which was about that too. I think that's still running. But the Incarcerated Nation became just all of us getting tired and creating our own projects. And then as it started from a campaign, that was the first one. And then it quickly grew to a corporation, like, okay, we need to incorporate this thing. We need to move forward. The grassroots is good, but we actually need donations. Vince Warren had told me that. He was like, 5, you're selfless. The fact that you asked for $5, people might give you 500 if you was tax deductible. And I was like, you know, Vince, you're right. Let me and Jazz incorporate this. Joseph Jazz Hayden, my godfather, my uncle Bill Johnson, BJ, Bullwhip, all of these are Black Panthers, Young Lords. That's what make up the network as far as leadership and board. It's always been Albert Woodfox, Robert King on Solitary. When they came home, they was like, here, nephew, here you go. As a matter of fact, the same day I came home, my Uncle Robert was doing an event and he was like, hey, I got a box of DVDs for you. Here you go. Don't worry about it. Here's this legislation we're working on. You take care of New York. I'm going to be out in Louisiana. We'll meet up in DC sometime, you know, and let's get going because this is the work. And he just came from doing 29 years in solitary, which was like just mind-boggling for me that you came home immediately.
The whole thing is crazy. I mean, solitary is one of those things that, you know, we believe needs to be immediately ended. Just like, you know, I talked to someone not that long ago who was there for a few months, and he said when he got into general population, everyone just left him alone because they were so impressed about how he managed the few months or whatever it was. Imagine living 3 decades. I cannot. Yeah, I can't fathom it.
So it's the basement of society, right? It is one of the punishments. And I always tell people, you know, when people ask me, especially about women, and I love it because they sometimes ask a category that they think is created. And I always use that little clip from Django, which I love Quentin Tarantino for including, about Solitary. When he came back looking for his wife, it was like, well, she was starting trouble, so she getting punished. Like, what do you mean? She in a hole, like she in a box. And that's what it was, right? So the question's always like, well, when did we start putting women in solitary? It was like, when did we stop?
Yeah.
When did we stop just digging a hole and putting people there because we needed another psychological punishment?
Yeah.
We needed something that goes beyond the physical punishment. Yes, I could literally whip you. I can beat you. If you run, I'll cut your leg off. You could just hop away. But I'll put your wife in this box. I'll put your kids in this box. The other thing is that the other community, because the box was usually just a hole in the middle of a cotton field. And so people are working around you suffering. So it's a psychological that, yes, there is another place, right? It reminds me of when I'm in the projects, I'm in the hood, I'm sitting on a bench, police pull up, oh God, do you live here? Let me see your ID. They stopping and frisk us, right? They searching you. And you're like, you know, you get locked up, you go to jail. You go to jail, you sit on the bench, you're in the yard, the police pull up on you, they jump out on you, let me see your ID. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm already in jail. What are you doing? They're like, oh, this is not jail. This is general population. There's a whole nother jail up under this. And that is the basement of society, right? But I want you to understand it for me as a New Yorker, a person who defends New York a lot and believes in his city, right? One, Rikers was built in 1650. What prison was alive in 1650? No, it predates every jail. The purpose of Rikers was because there was a pork belly investment to build a pig farm because Wall Street was trading pork bellies and they really wanted to have a farm that was local. Of course, New York legend is real New York legend, so the rats ate the pigs. The rats won that battle. They was like, oh, you putting food over here? And, you know, the city's idea was like, we have to monetize this, so they built the world's largest jail. We can imagine who carried one rock from Queens and went and put it down to build that. We can imagine who did that in 1600s, right? And so Rikers was built as a punishment system. Now, what was invented in New York State as soon as they went from there, because we're the Quakers, which I work with a lot of American Friends Service Committee, been working with them for years. They're an amazing organization. With the Quakers sort of selfless fighting, they were like, you know, we tried solitary, it didn't work. Everybody went crazy. New York was like, oh, no, we'll take that. That works for us. Matter of fact, we'll put one in every county as people come through Ellis Island and build this country. And so state systems were born in New York. Auburn was like, well, we kind of need a place to kill these northern soldiers. Like, we don't give a fuck about them, these southern soldiers. We're going to kill their ass when they get here, right? So they had like a northern soldier on. He's still up there. The statue's still up there to today. A northern soldier on top. So when soldiers went there, they immediately knew that this place was ran by the enemy. Like, you were going to. So what did they invent in Auburn? The electric chair. Let's figure out how much voltage it takes to fry a person. Waterboarding. All these things were invented by New York, right? Every felon disenfranchisement law did this with the Brennan Center, was created in New York. That's what we call it. It's called Jim Crow in New York. And it's how New York invented it. It invented black codes. All of the black codes started here, literally. Yeah. And then were passed in other counties up in the rest of the country because everybody came through here. So you wanted to show that example. These people are the low class. As you move up, you figure your way in above them. You go fight with the Italians, the Irish fight with this. But remember that these people are your cattle. These people will make you income in your county. And that's the mentality.
Right.
So
and
don't get me wrong. When you have groups that are saying, hey, I just want to cut 50% of slavery, that's it.
Right, exactly.
I don't trust those groups, right? When you're saying that prisons need to exist just in half capacity. No, we need to abolish this system because of its horrendous history, but also because of its industrial nature. If it's self-sustaining, it will be self-sustaining. And so I just wanted to just mention that because New York is that first domino. That's why I have to end Rikers here. I have to end prisons here. As I was ending Rikers here, I was able to form in 12 other states. Like, hey, we got a jail group. Can we make a jails action out here? Yes, you can. I'll be right out there on Thursday to help you, right? Like, it's important to have those pieces as timeline. My next one is MDC. I'm going after that. That was built in 1700. Like, I'm tearing down these historical sites because in New York, we have theater attractions. We got MDC, which was like modeled after Death Row, the whole bridge between the buildings, which was architecturally ridiculous. They just wanted you to feel the doom of going to the death penalty, right? Then we have like a floating jail that leaks. Like literally we have a barge on a boat, like it floats. And we bought that from the feds and haven't parked it yet. And we have Rikers Island, 400 acres of prime real estate in a state that builds very well this way and very well that way. But we dedicate that space to punishment and cycling 200,000 people at the cost of 200,000 a year. This is why we beat San Francisco for the most expensive place to live in the United States of America. This is why it also contains one of the poorest districts in the country, New York 15. So there's a lot. When you look at New York 15, 90% of people that go to Rikers are from New York 15, from the South Bronx now. I mean, it used to be Brooklyn, but they kind of fixed that problem. They've got Brooklyn courts in every prison now. And so that structure of integrating the people and onboarding them into a process of slavery never stopped. Right. And it started here. So I have to knock this domino over first. Like it's a strategic win. We need to. Rikers is going to close in 2026. It came at if we don't do it, it's not going to happen. Somebody had to work with the Department of Justice to make ends meet. I've been doing that for 4 years. That's how I met Janos. That's how, when he first, and he was so, Janos was like, I'm going to quit this shit. I'm like, they're going to fire you. You don't got to worry about quitting. Like, you're an activist. You shouldn't even have this job. And he joined Glenn and did the closed Rikers and then, went on to his career. But the purpose of the DOJ and working with them was like, the system can exist if we allow ourselves to be emotionally excluded, right? They didn't understand Homer, who was like, I did a lot of work in this. Like, I literally trained Homer Ventures, who was like the assistant commissioner, because I realized Department of Mental Health and Hygiene, the prisons are made up of certain authorities, and I need to get the psychs on board because they have a different medical commitment. They have something that they could sort of stand in front of beyond security, beyond, their main goal should be human preservation. And so won't you hold them accountable? I got the top psychs on my back, like my lawyers, and like I said, I'm blessed. My therapists were Stuart Grassi and Terry Cuppers and Craig Haney. Like, I was okay when I came home, and I'm sort of like probably the most insane person. But that system that exists because we allow it. I knew that there was a copy of every ticket in the juvenile system in medical as well, and in DOHMH. So when we're fighting Rikers and they're like, there was no tickets written ever. I'm like, because I was literally there. I remember the fights. I remember this. Okay, you're talking about the triplicate forms that are quadruple. So the pink form, let's follow that. Where does that go? Where does that yellow copy go? Turns out the guy that they made chief was like one of the worst abusers, right? So we had to get those records. That empowered the psychs to be like, oh, we can do something. We can use this fucking paperwork to hold these guys accountable. Now, that was able to get Corizon out of the jail. And so like those things take meticulous work. There's no paycheck for that, bro.
Yeah.
Like I'm in the White House with Obama. People see me. Oh, you with the president? Yeah, he wasn't like, 5 great work. I want to just give you a little something no, that doesn't happen. Like I had to borrow money to get on Amtrak there, right? Like it's a fight. It's a humble fight, but the change is incredible. If we don't do it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
When we did Old Box Time, right? Councilman Drum, one of the first bills I did when I came home was when I went back to jail, they was like, oh, Five, it's been a while since we seen you. You still owe us like 1,300 days. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about all that property. We're going to send you right to the box. Like, oh, well, I've been home. My classification down. I'm not in the Supermax no more. I was like, oh, no, don't worry. We got boxes in the mediums. We got them everywhere. Like, you'll go to a shoe in a medium. And it was that just perpetual punishment, right? That was illegal. Like, if a person leaves the jail and returns on a different charge, how in New York State that happens? Turns out the city's the same way. If you're in Rikers, you're getting locked up, you're cursing them out like you got a DWI, you're like, look, I'm going home tomorrow. The CO writes you a ticket, so you go to solitary. You're like, dude, as soon as I go to court, I'm going home. You get locked up 5 years later and go back, might be that same guard, but in the system, you owe them time. And so that was one of the first bills that I did. And the add-on, which Councilman Drum is incredible, is like, yeah, but now we got to also do an additional bill to add on to make sure that people are there. So we did a reporting bill. I got to put on your website. So this is how you can go to docs websites and look people up. This is how they have to report in their web. They was forced to do that every way. Jennifer Parrish, I just have to throw her name out there. I love this woman. She's amazing. Urban Justice Center, executive director of the mental health program. She's so tough. Like, she's super tough. I've never met a white woman that was down for like that much of civil disobedience when I came home. She was like, no, Five, we got this. Don't worry about this. Take it off the earrings. Like, so you were saying that, and she's the executive director of the project that trains all the NYPD, most of the correctional officers. And that's who I that's who we created Jails Action with. Like, she helped me launch this whole project. There really was a community of people, lawyers, activists. So you didn't have anything to say. And that's the way to move. COADs, community groups, right? Within Jack, why we're so successful with corrections in New York is that, what are you going to say? Legal representation? We have legal aid. We have all the lawyers in the state on this team. We have all of the providers. We have all of the people that train you. We have all of the people that train other city officials. And we together are saying this is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. Like,
and that's not even 2020, bro.
So
2020 was emergency networks, because I've been building nonprofits for the last year, 13 emergency networks, including the South Bronx Emergency Network. My uncles and them created the Citizens Emergency Response Network. This is like, what if FEMA shuts down? Like, right, what are we gonna do? Like, we're gonna rely on them? But if I had a network, a Citizens Emergency Response Network, then I can include the dollar store where I get flashlights, battery, radio. Like, we have our own system. And when the pandemic hit, FEMA called us. Like, you guys have the plan. How do we respond?
So wait, were you weren't, so you guys weren't already in the process when the pandemic hit, right? This was like, you were.
I was doing it since Obama mentioned it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And since the CDC came out with the first report about another SARS, we created emergency networks back then.
Yeah. So while some people in federal government were getting rid of task forces and, like, you know, making sure we'd be in the worst possible shape, you were trying to at least keep, you know, your area as safe as possible through mutual aid and coordination, you know, community based. And it sounds like
also, sorry.
No,
but it's also based on the system of the same system FEMA works. So FEMA works in this ICS system where they have different categories. This is how they come in and be like, we got this, we're in control. I got this person for this. No, we got the same positions. We don't need you.
Yeah, so you modeled it after that. So you could, you know, I mean, there is some sense to the way it's structured, and you leverage that part without the bureaucracy and the, you know, the whatever else prevents them from actually doing what they're tasked with doing. And it sounds like Texas could have really used this. Over the last couple of weeks, we've seen what happens when these kind of community-based institutions and, you know, public ownership of power grids and things like that are not implemented.
Yeah.
So I know right now the Incarcerated Nation website is still in the works. Do you have a date for when it'll be back up?
So it's going to be backed up later on by Monday of next week.
Great.
Because when I tried to pull together a team of people to do this work, and I had so many independent coders, that turned into a whole nother project. So we have justice coding classes for people coming home now. We have another coding program for young kids. So like sometimes you build things and you invite so many people, it's like, damn, now it's a thing.
Yeah.
The purpose of, you know, and I really was just trying to do a selfish move of revamping the website, but the reason why
isn't selfish, by the way, but it's not selfish, by the way, to want to people to be able to access, you know, the information.
Right. But I mean, selfish is like, I was trying to cash in a whole bunch of tech favors that I had
to
get it done, and it ended up turning into another system. But one of the things that we're doing this year, which we sort of back, because we had to do 2020 all emergency network. So we've been doing emergency units, COADs, and community groups, and PPE, and 15,000 meals a day in the Bronx, and all these other sort of networks that allow the credible message to serve. That's done. Now, moving forward, I'm sort of pulling the other project that was in the back burner in 2019 of the academies, the youth. One of our main problems, when we did the Khalif Browder film, right? I consulted on that. When we did the Khalif Browder film, I was hoping it would educate the world that at the end of that series, you get the same understanding from the first film I ever consulted on, which was Michael K. Williams in The Night Of. It was about Rikers Island. And this one kid in 6 months totally changed in 6 months, like his life, his trajectory, his sort of focus. But the Khalif story was, you got 6 months at Rikers, then you get this 5 years on probation, right? He didn't take that deal, and that's what he fought for. But you have so many kids who get that. We have over 500,000 kids, just between like 14 and 21, on probation for years. No program. I'm not even gonna tell you how the Credible Messenger movement sort of split in two ways too, because we've had to work with the city to create programs. And they were like, okay, 2 years of meetings and organizing, we developed the Arches. Arches was like 6 months. 6 months, you give me $4 a week to feed this kid. You give me $15 to give the kid when he comes in a meeting. First of all, these kids make $15 an hour anywhere or a sale. I'm not concerned about the money, but the Metro card money that I'm able to give him, all that stuff stops at a point when I'm just starting to get to know him, when I'm just starting to realize that his family may be the issue and maybe he needs housing as well, right? Like, so this kid's got 5 years on probation. You even have a job for him. And so when we created with Katal, and Katal launched it, it was their bill and legislation, but Gabriel, a good friend of mine, and Gabe and Alfonso was like, they was trying to create a legislation to say that, you know, less is actually creating more. So our less is more New York bill. It's every district attorney immediately signed on. It was incredible. Like all 4 DAs was like, yeah, I got like 2 million kids in the borough on probation. Like, this is ridiculous. It's only gonna light into the adults. So we try to use Meek Mill, which was a mistake, Van Jones and them, but we try, you know, Meek Mill was an example and a really high class example. But the real core problem was New York, and that we had this problem of over incarceration with our youth. So it just makes sense to me. I'm sorry, but I just look at things like it's idiotic. Like, okay, give me that kid for 5 years. Like, I could find 5 years worth of shit. I got colleges I built, I got programs, and now I have housing. So my program is go home, wherever you're living, go pack all your shit. Let's go for 5 years. I got you. You live here.
Holistic, right? Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And we developed like Mikey Likes It Academy, which is one of our academies. You work at Mikey Likes It. We have our own franchise retail. We sell ice cream. We make ice cream that the proceeds go back to our nonprofits, right? Some of us are better hustlers than we are beggars. And we have to wait to sustain this movement. I'm going to make it so that ice cream is in every community store and you can write it off on your taxes, right? It becomes like I'm opening up another black market where the youth are going to work. It's called the black market because it works like cryptocurrency. It's like cool. CBD, smoke shop, all of that. But in the same concept, most of the items in there are for donation. And so every month, your corner store bill, you can write off. Don't worry about it. You can take one of our tax classes and our preps will help you understand how you can save and save your family money.
Wow.
So that's what we're launching. I designed 12 academies. One is like for Jim Jones. He has like gym class, which is dope. He's teaching kids around music, but also physical fitness. That's my cousin Shay. He does bikes. He has a Go Hard Boys where every Sunday in New York, kids just on motorcycles, no matter what gang they're in, no matter what group they're in, they're all together. We have Mikey Likes It Academy that trains kids into the public health field about food. We have Health Station. We have 7 food trucks with Health Station. We do all of the food in the Schomburg. Where then you're taking classes by all these classes are taught by the Panthers. All the classes are taught by the Young Lords. All the classes are taught by advocates and organizers. There's certain mandatory things that we feel is mandatory, like civics, like voting laws, like jury duty, like how important part of you understanding what banking is and business, because a lot of them are hustlers. So we have that program that converts them, because if you're selling weed, you know how to market, produce, you're just missing, and maybe the merchandise can be cheaper. Like if you sell hats, you'll make more profit, right? And so all of those are built into these academies, but the academies last your community sentence, right? In a time where you are in need the most, the community is supposed to jump you in some sense, you know? And that's what we created. And so I'm working on 2 houses in the Bronx. I have a 3-family house that I'm still working in the fundraiser because I need about $250,000 for this. And it's going to be unique because the landlord was like, just give me $6,000 a month. I'm like, for the whole house? He's like, what you're doing, I wish I could just give it to you, but let's just work on bare minimum. And I'm like, okay, I'll get that for you. That's like, $60,000 a year. I could work on some grants and try to re-pull money from Keith Powers because I love Keith. I'm not going to lie. City councilman gives me $100,000 in new school. Here you go. You need $200,000. Let's go. You're doing the real work. But 60 cents of every dollar goes to the new school.
Right.
I'm paying for classrooms. I'm paying for prejudice and bias, and I'm not even going to talk about, but it has to be a safe space for our kids.
Yep.
And for me, the college always has to be included. It doesn't have to be the new school. It could be others, which I'm trying to work on, because I've seen the power of that college ID and the grandmother's just crying because this is the first kid in the whole family to go to school. It's also a great tool because a lot of our kids don't have their GEDs. So I put them right into the college program and they're like, don't worry, we'll just fix that little thing on the back end. We'll get that GED thing because you're moving forward. And so we juggle them,
wow.
And that helps. And then I have the nation's largest student group. So you already have that next level of students who are in college. Like, if you want to go to Columbia, come hang with me, I'll get you in. And then you have that peer-to-peer mentor. So that's what I do too. We help onboard them into schools. And so the program is unique, but we have unique circumstances. We're 400 years behind. We're 400 years underfunded. It's community-based, so I'm not really good at kissing butt. You know, I was doing this event with Van Jones in the White House, and I like fussed him out in front of Obama. It's like one of the most famous pictures of me on the internet. If you Google me and Van Jones, you'll see like the worst horrible pictures. But it's to the point that I just can't have principles. Like, I'm there advocating for my uncle AWKWORD funds. I don't care about you talking about some people intentionally go to jail. Like, are you that far removed from the community? Yeah, he said that on stage next to me, bro. And I'm like, did he just say that to me? And I'm already like half off of Eric Holder, who runs the Koch brothers, who funds him. Like, I'm not here to attack him. My issue is that there's so many people out there astroturfing.
Yeah.
It's hard, and I don't want to start any controversy, but there's people like, I got friends that I did whole movies for, helped their movement build, and then they blocked me afterwards when they finished using me. Cool, that's your purpose. But my purpose is greater than that. Abolition, changing this world, changing the structure, the system of how we do things. Even the system of defense and how we do things, right? Should always include the next generation. And we're losing in New York with so many kids, bro. It is so crazy for the young people. It's idiotic in New York, specifically in New York. 18, you age out of foster care, you can get kicked out. 18 is when most households are like, awkward, you need to start looking at, your girlfriend got a space, you're gonna move with her, right? We need that room. So community is already strapped. But in that concept, you can't get your own social services or your own budget until 6 months after your 22nd birthday, right? But 17, you're an adult if you're locked up. You understand me? Like, so you're in jail, a grown adult. Let's say you do a city bullet. You come home, you're homeless, you have nowhere to go, you technically can't go into the shelter, and you can't get services. So there's no support. There's this
5
middle
years
ground.
of that. 5 years, right? Like, with nothing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Sorry. So I'm passionate about.
Dude, yeah, man. I'm so glad to have had you on. You know, I've never asked fewer questions because just letting you talk was the right move. I mean, it's a miracle you're the only one to have figured out how to fit 48 hours in one day. Because if you didn't figure that out, like, you wouldn't be able to do all this stuff.
Honestly, I'm differently able. I have the same disorder like Einstein had. I have schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. My days are 48 at a time. So 2 days a week, run for full 48s. Literally, like, if I'm in the bed, I'm just going to be like Dracula in it. Like, just sitting there like Dracula with my eyes open. So I might as well get up and get work done. Yeah. But our offices are different. So our offices run 24 hours, right? Like, when Rikers let you out at 1 o'clock in the morning, who's open, right? We are, right. Violence doesn't happen when the club starts at 7, right? It happens at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And so this credible messaging movement is really something that's going to change the community, because each one is a different spin. Like, Help Station and Mikey Likes It Ice Cream provides jobs from the ice cream truck. Like, that's the perfect opportunity to get an ice cream cone. Like, hey man, you working? You got health insurance? Like, what's going on at home? You need a job for the summer? Like, it's a perfect interaction with the youth, and it's ran by the youth, and the funds go to the youth. It's a perfect system.
Have you talked with at all with Emily Galvin Almanza from Partners for Justice? Partners for Justice.
No, who's that?
I would. She's the person I interviewed just before you, and she's really into a lot of the same stuff.
Link us, man.
Yeah, like the concept of holistic defense, and she's a defense attorney who started this organization to basically do what public defenders can't do by actually helping those who are put in the position of having to defend themselves.
That can actually grow to shut down the system. Like, right. I tried that, defense program Like, all you need is a couple of 1,000 cases and the system will crash in New York. Like, literally, if a couple thousand people went to trial, it's over with.
Yeah, man. So so I will definitely connect the two of you. I think there's potential there. I know you're working on a couple more movies. Obviously,
Yes.
I would love to get some awkward music in the soundtrack.
Honestly, I was thinking about you, but I had no input on this Judas. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I was like, I gotta put it like 5. We know you know everybody. Like, we got Nas, we got Nipsey, we got this. I'm like, okay, you know, I'm just gonna shut up.
The funny thing is with Judas and the Black Messiah, I'm friends with Shaka. I've known Shaka for 20 years, and you know, he directed it, wrote it, produced it. I was like, holy shit, man! I'm proud of that guy.
Listen, let me tell you something. I don't know Shaka too well. You know, my uncle's Jamal Joseph. I do films with like the family and stuff. And Lisa Russell, I work with her. We have a new film coming out.
Cool.
So this Shaka, in the beginning, the two brothers who were really pitching the concept didn't have inclusion in mind. It's not a problem. It's just that, you know, you're not going to talk about us without us.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Especially not with the queen. We got Fred here. Like, we got the chairman. Like, they're alive. The House is actually trying to get a campaign to do it and keep it.
I think he finally.
That's the route they went, and it changed the story.
Yep,
changed everything. But you now have an accurate depiction, including the love in the movement, right? Including the togetherness, including the bond, and including showing the selfishness of this agent who, in his mind, that badge represented power, right? Those two questions in that interrogation room was real questions. Like, how do you feel about Martin? Like, what? I don't got time for that nigga. Oh, good. Let's talk about you. How do you need? And that's what the manipulation comes into power. That little 10 heart with numbers is a part of being a part of the responsible 99%. You know, basically saying that you can be an overseer for the 1% with this little 10 heart with numbers. Let's put it on here. You're bold, you're authorized to be an overseer for these other people. It's not always a racial concept. There were Black overseers, there were Mexican overseers, there were Chinese people who were selling their own slaves, building the railroads. While we were picking cotton, they were picking tomatoes and radishes and building the railroads. And we were all oppressed. And we don't see that we have a common enemy. I'm not saying that capitalism is that greatest enemy, but community, anti-community is our enemy. Anti-separation, that separation, classism is our true enemy in my sense. And it's not about racism, because that's a sick mental disease about white superiority, but that's how this country was founded. And so it's going to take undoing that. And the more people we educate continuously, educate, activate, organize. I grew up on those principles. I still live by them. I'm here to die for the people. I don't want to be a hashtag, but that's a possible route. But in this concept, my work is for this movement. And we make change, is capital we change as well. And that's our motto in Incarcerated Nation, because we also change through that process, right? We might have been the ones who tore the neighborhood up. And we have so much dehumanized loss in our bodies that we haven't even talked about it, you know? And that's why I built this. That's why we built this in Saj, who was my partner and my comrade, not partner, but friend. I have to watch the words I say after prison, because it just have totally different definitions now. I did that when I came home. I had my son like, hey, you're my domestic partner. He was like, Dad, what are you doing? Like, that means something different now. But I can't escape this work. My neighbor's son is doing life. My sister's, who has the Girls Project, she has her own nonprofit. She also has real estate, but her husband's locked up. Like, my neighbor across the hall, her son is in solitary. This one's kid is in green. Like, this is what I live. There is no vacation for me, and there's no trophies, and I don't want one. I want to do this work, you know? Sorry. Because heal people, heal other people.
No, I mean, it's one of those things that I've been inspired. The injustice has inspired me since I was a kid, and I think I'd be, any bit of me that is like you would make me proud. I feel like I would be I would be even more like you than I already am, if I could say the same thing. You know, I moved upstate when I met my wife, so now I'm just in the middle of the woods. But when I lived in Brooklyn and I was the only one who didn't get cleared when the cops ran through, because you know, even if I had a blunt in my mouth, you know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I admire the work that you do. Is there anything that you want to, you know, to leave with? Is there a way that people who don't have the commitment for, you know, from a time perspective, or for whatever reason can't be out there in person, you know, coordinating, helping you, where can someone who's got a lot of money and feels what you're saying help?
Well, we're on every platform, Class C, Act Blue. The website will be up by next week. We're just adding the different structural projects so that people can individually donate to those projects as well. Cool. We have a store that's opening. When we get that store open, it's like you can come in and anything you buy supports the movement, right? We have a print shop. If you print t-shirts, like our youth does that within a nonprofit. We do Defenders t-shirts and their bags and stuff. We have to create sustainable systems within the movement. My email for the last 10 years now. It's crazy. I look back and like how long I've been home almost 10 years. 5@incarceratednation.org. And our email, incarceratednationnetwork.org. The website will be up. It'll really have everything because, you know, as I was rebuilding it, I'm like, God, I have like so many projects that we've done and inspired. Like I have one project that we did, which turned into Hyper-Ak, which is a business that makes and manages other websites. And that was just a hackathon I did. We did like 26 websites in 48 hours. And I took all of the students in the new school, a bunch of hackers. And D-Roy runs Hyper-Ak now, is amazing. And he just like hired all the kids that graduated and created this company. But I'm gonna tell you the benefit. Canva, the Black Male Achievement, he runs their website. He's running the Department of Corrections website and probation now. And yeah, and Vera was horrible. I was like, Mary, I mean, I love Vera. When Nick got involved, I'm like, yeah, but Mary's like 66. She doesn't even have Facebook. Like, why don't you hire these college kids and let them run the whole website? Now the website is amazing. So it makes incremental impacts, right, into the way we absorb in information that we receive to empower us to do something. When Kerry Kennedy and I was doing a mass bailout, it was like, okay, we need another site because all of these groups got ego. So we need another site so that everybody could join. Done, 24 hours, bang, right? Because I have a whole system of people that can do that. And now I'm trying to, you know, help expand that. I'm going to mention it again. We have a whole new code for justice class at Columbia that's going to train people coming home to do that. And we need those systems to keep this movement going. And I'm not going to stop. Like, that's me.
No, you can't. I know you.
No, I can't. I'm a robot.
Yeah, you can't. I just hope that this website is able to put, you know, to have all of this information that's in your head that you've shared with me. Like, I want people to be able to see all of these different things that are going on at the same time. So that's,
yeah, it's grown. It's grown over the years.
Get this website, like, you know, and I do website crap too. So if you need help organizing it, just let me know. It's like,
I am going to be calling you. This is live, everybody. We got to hold them accountable on the air. Like, this is live. This is.
Yep. I mean, yeah, I owe you a lot now. Hold me to it, man. I would love to help in any way I can.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time, brother.
No, I appreciate you too. And I kind of talk a lot, but that means that we have a lot to do.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm really glad you do.
Yeah, and we do a lot, you know? So, and this is all power to the people. I just want to be honest that none of this would happen if not for people who are watching this right now. If not for that, if you can't find your way to get involved, call me personally. I'll help you find it. Like, we have people in our network that's like, Five, I don't know what to do. I'm just on Facebook all day. You know what's funny? We need somebody on Facebook for this campaign. Why don't you come and organize that? There's a way to get in. Just repost. Be a retweeter. That's another movement, just sharing information that you see is important to you, to your community. There's a way to get in. We have to make this change. This country is us. In New York, the city is ours. We need to improve it. You know, we got people and politicians, but they're no good if we don't motivate and push them. That's and all power comes from the people.